All right, so today's deep dive, well, we're going deep on a match that on paper, might look like a total snooze fest.
Right.
A 0-0 draw between West Ham and Everton.
Yeah.
But trust me on this one, you're going to see why this match is way more interesting than that scoreline suggests.
Yeah.
There were tactical battles and standout performances and moments that had me, like, on the edge of my seat wondering, like, is somebody going to crack?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Sometimes the most captivating football isn't about the goals. It's about that tension.
Right.
The feeling that like any little thing could change the whole dynamic of the match.
Yeah.
And this West Ham Everton clash was full of moments like that.
So let's set the stage a little bit. Both these teams have been kind of struggling this season, especially when it comes to, finding the back of the net.
Right.
So that has to play into how they approach this match, right?
Absolutely. Going into this game, both
Yeah.
managers were clearly prioritizing a safety-first approach.
Okay.
For West Ham under Lopetegui, that meant a 4-3-3 formation with a focus on controlling that midfield and just stifling Everton's attacks before they can even really develop. It's like they were trying to build a fortress around their own goal.
Okay, so West Ham playing it safe. What about Everton? I know their manager Dyche has a reputation for being pretty defensively minded.
He does. And this match was a perfect example of that. Dyche set up Everton in his trademark 4-5-1.
Right.
A formation so compact, it's practically designed to induce claustrophobia in the opposing team.
Oh, wow.
The goal was to clog up that midfield, minimize gaps, and basically dare West Ham to find a way through.
So we've got two teams essentially kind of mirroring each other with these really cautious approaches.
Right.
But at some point, somebody has to try to make something happen, right?
You're right. And for West Ham, that spark almost came from Crescencio Somerville.
Okay.
This guy was a live wire on the wing, constantly probing for weaknesses in Everton's defense.
Yeah.
There was this moment in the second half where he nearly broke the deadlock, unleashing a shot that just clanged off the post.
Oh, man.
It's one of those moments that makes you jump out of your seat, even in a goalless game.
I bet. And what about on the Everton side? Was there anyone who really stepped up and kind of kept them in this game?
Oh, without a doubt, that would be Jordan Pickford.
Right.
Everton's goalkeeper was absolutely immense in this match.
Yeah.
He made a string of crucial saves. But the one that really stands out was his last-minute stop on Danny Ings.
Wow.
It was a point-blank shot that looked for all the world like it was going in the back of the net. But Pickford somehow got a hand to it. Absolutely world-class goalkeeping.
So it sounds like we're starting to see a theme here that both teams are emphasizing defense, relying on these key players to make those game-changing moments.
Right.
But I'm guessing the managers weren't just, sitting back and watching this all unfold, were they?
No, not at all. Throughout the match, both Lopetegui and Dyche were making adjustments, tweaking their tactics, trying to gain an edge. Lopetegui, sensing the need for more attacking punch, brought on Danny Ings and Carlos Soler later in the game. It was a gamble, pushing more players forward.
Right.
But he clearly wasn't content to just settle for a draw.
And how did Dyche respond to those substitutions?
He immediately tightened up his midfield marking, essentially closing down the spaces that West Ham were trying to exploit.
Okay.
It was classic Dyche reacting to his opponent's moves, plugging any potential leaks in that defensive wall.
So even in a match that ends 0-0, we're seeing this constant back and forth between the managers.
Right.
Almost like a chess match, where each move is designed to counter the other.
Precisely. And this is where it gets really interesting because you start to see the depth of their strategic thinking.
Yeah.
Even in a match that at first glance might seem like a tactical bore.
Right.
Both managers were adapting on the fly, trying to outmaneuver each other. And that's what kept the tension so high throughout the match.
Okay, so we've talked about the defensive focus, the key players, and this managerial chess match that's going on. But now I want to understand why this goalless draw matters.
Yeah.
What does it tell us about these teams and their potential, moving forward?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Let's break it down, starting with West Ham.
Okay.
For them, the inability to turn their possession dominance into goals is a massive concern. They had their chances, but ultimately they lacked that killer instinct in the final third.
So it's not just about scoring more goals, it's about the how and the why behind those struggles.
Exactly, and that's where the real analysis comes in. Was it a lack of creativity in their passing?
Right.
Were the forwards making poor runs? Or was it simply a matter of Everton's defense being so well drilled that West Ham just couldn't find any cracks? These are the questions that Lopetegui will be pondering as he tries to figure out how to unlock his team's attacking potential.
And what about on the other side? What about Everton? They managed to keep a clean sheet, but is that enough to feel optimistic about their future?
Well, their defensive performance was undeniably impressive.
Right.
They were disciplined, organized, and incredibly difficult to break down.
Yeah.
But, and this is a big book, but their lack of goal-scoring threat is a major worry.
Right.
If they want to climb up the table, they need to find a way to consistently threaten the opposition's goal.
So we've got West Ham needing to find a way to score and Everton needing to find a way to, well, score more.
Basically, yeah.
Seems like a pretty clear takeaway, but I have a feeling there's a lot more to unpack here.
You're absolutely right. We've only just scratched the surface of this tactical battle.
Okay.
And to truly understand the implications of this match, we need to dive deeper into some of the key moments, those turning points that could have shifted the balance in either direction.
Sounds like we've got our work cut out for us. Let's take a closer look at those key moments when we come back.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Before we went deeper, we were talking about how both West Ham and Everton walked away from this match with a point.
Right.
But with some pretty glaring issues that need to be addressed if they want to turn those draws into wins.
Exactly. And it's funny, a 0-0 draw doesn't exactly scream excitement.
Right.
But when you start breaking down the individual moments, the tactical decisions, it becomes a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely. And to illustrate that, I think it's worth kind of rewinding back to some of those key moments.
Okay.
Those turning points that could have easily swung the match, in either direction.
Okay, so let's rewind. What moment sticks out to you as the most pivotal?
For me, it has to be Somerville's near goal in the second half.
Okay.
It was the 68th minute. West Ham were starting to control possession, and Somerville cut inside from the right wing, creating just enough space to unleash a shot. And it looked for all the world like it was going in, but it just smacked off the post.
Man, I bet that had West Ham fans thinking, here we go. What was it about Everton's defense that made it so hard for them to break through in that moment?
Everton center backs Tarkowski and Cody were absolutely rock solid. They limited West Ham's forwards to very few clear looks at goal. And whenever West Ham tried to play those dangerous through balls, Everton's midfielders were quick to drop back and close those passing lanes.
Right.
Dyche's system was working like a well-oiled machine.
And what about West Ham? Were they doing anything tactically to try and unlock that Everton defense?
They were trying, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Lopetegui's initial game plan seemed to rely on those quick short passes to try and move the ball through Everton's lines. But when that wasn't working, you could see them starting to get a little more direct, trying to play those long balls over the top to their forwards. It almost paid off, too.
Almost. What happened?
Well, this is where Jordan Pickford comes in.
Right.
In the 87th minute, West Ham launched one of those long balls forward, and Danny Ings managed to get on the end of it, controlling the ball beautifully. He took a touch, set himself up, and fired a shot that looked destined for the bottom corner.
And Pickford
somehow managed to get across his goal and make an absolutely incredible save. It was one of those moments where you just have to tip your hat to the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
He read the play perfectly, reacted instinctively, and kept Everton in the game.
So we've got Somerville hitting the post for West Ham.
Right.
We've got Pickford pulling off this wonder save for Everton.
Yeah.
It sounds like both managers were making adjustments throughout the match, but were there any specific substitutions or tactical tweaks that you think really stood out?
Absolutely. Bringing on Ings and Soleil was a clear signal that Lopetegui wanted to inject more attacking energy into his team. Ings is a proven goal scorer, and Soleil is a creative midfielder who can unlock defenses with his passing.
And what about Dyche? How did he counter those attacking substitutions?
He responded by doubling down on his defensive strategy.
Okay.
He brought on a more defensive-minded midfielder, Tom Davies, to shore up that midfield, and instructed his team to focus on closing down space, denying West Ham any room to operate in the final third. It was a classic example of if you score, we score mentality.
So basically it was a battle of attrition. Both managers knew that a single goal could decide the match, and they were willing to do whatever it took to prevent that goal from going in.
Exactly. And in a way, the result, a 0-0 draw, reflects that tactical stalemate. Neither manager was able to find a way to consistently outmaneuver the other.
Right.
It was like a game of chess, where both players are grandmasters, constantly anticipating and countering each other's moves.
And that makes me wonder if one of these teams had a more potent attack, or maybe just a moment of individual brilliance from a forward. Could this have been a completely different game?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll be exploring in more detail when we come back.
Right.
Because while this match might have ended in a goalless draw,
Right.
it raises some fascinating questions about the future of both West Ham and Everton and their ability to compete in a league that demands goals, goals, goals.
Welcome back to the deep dive. So we've spent this whole episode analyzing a match that on the surface might have seemed like a little bit of a snooze fest, West Ham and Everton battling to a 0-0 draw. But as we've uncovered, there's so much more to this game than meets the eye.
Absolutely. We've seen tactical masterclasses from both managers, standout performances from key players,
Yeah.
and moments that could have easily, tipped the scales in either direction.
And that brings us to what I think is like the most intriguing part of this whole deep dive.
Right.
Figuring out what this draw means for both teams as they move forward.
Yeah, you're right. It's easy to just look at the scoreline and say, well, they both got a point. Nothing much changed. But when you look at the underlying trends, the strengths and weaknesses that were kind of exposed in this match,
Yeah.
it tells a much more complex story.
Okay, so let's start with West Ham. They dominated possession for like large stretches of this game, but they just couldn't find a way to break down Everton's defense. What's the biggest takeaway for them?
For me, it boils down to a lack of cutting edge in the final third.
Okay.
They were able to move the ball up the pitch, create some decent chances.
Right.
But when it came to that final pass, that moment of magic to unlock the defense, they just weren't there.
So it's not just about scoring more goals, it's about finding a way to create those higher quality chances.
Precisely. And that raises some interesting questions for Lopetegui. Does he need to adjust his tactics? Maybe incorporate more direct passing, more runs in behind the defense? Or does he need to look at his personnel, maybe bring in a player with that creative spark, that ability to pick out those killer passes?
And what about Everton? They seemed content to kind of sit back, absorb pressure, rely on Pickford to bail them out. Is that a sustainable strategy in the long run?
Well, their defensive performance was certainly impressive. They were organized, disciplined, and made it incredibly difficult for West Ham to create anything clear-cut.
Right.
But as we've discussed, their lack of attacking threat is a major concern.
It's almost like they're playing with a hand tied behind their back. They can defend, but can they actually go out and win matches if they're not scoring goals?
That's the million-dollar question for Dyche. He's built a solid foundation, but now he needs to find a way to add some firepower to his attack. Whether that means bringing in a new striker, adjusting his tactics to create more chances, or simply getting more out of his current players, that's something that he needs to address if Everton want to climb up the table.
So we've got West Ham needing to figure out how to convert their possession into goals, and we've got Everton needing to find a way to generate more attacking threat. Two very different challenges.
Right.
But equally important if they want to turn these draws into wins.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that this goalless draw, this seemingly uneventful match, has actually revealed so much about where these teams stand and what they need to do to improve.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most insightful analysis comes from those matches that at first glance might seem like a little bit of a bore.
Couldn't agree more. By digging beneath the surface, by analyzing the tactics, the individual performances, we gain a much deeper understanding of the game.
And that's what the deep dive is all about. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll catch you next time for another deep dive into the beautiful game